It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
All right, let's talk quarterbacks. This happened in our mock. It's happened in a lot of other mocks. Happened in your mocks. You had Levis sliding farther than anybody else that I've seen, all the way down to 22. The Rams trading up to get him and end his slide there. Most people kind of have his floor 19 to Tampa. I kind of like your approach, though, what you did with Tampa, of saying, like, yeah, they don't necessarily need to figure out quarterback now. They're just going to rebuild the roster for a couple years and be bad. And that means you get higher draft picks and can better rebuild your roster. Not that they'll be great with Will Levis, but you get the point. So rather start that quarterback contract farther down the line. How has Anthony Richardson separated himself from Levis? And also kind of when you think about Levis as the fourth guy now, what's his ceiling? What's his floor?
I think it's just landing spot there. And that's always with quarterbacks, right? There's not a lot of people I know who have CJ Stroud QB1, but I think he's going number one overall because just Carolina thinks he fits them better. But and that's what with Indy. I think Indy's, Chris Ballard is one of, if not the most traits-driven GM with his draft track record. He's always chasing the highest-end athletes possible, and you won't find one higher end than Anthony Richardson. So I think that's like a fit with that. And then with Levis, it's kind of just so many guys or so many teams have got their guy, whether it's Vegas signing Jimmy G, whether it's Atlanta claiming they're in on Desmond Ridder, and then Seattle, Detroit just being kind of in a window, right? Like they can win now, those teams. And they have quarterbacks who maybe aren't quote unquote franchise guys, but they're close. They're like right on that edge of, are they franchise guys? Are they not? And in the NFC right now, they think they're maybe a Jalen Carter or Tyree Wilson away from maybe winning it because how weak the conference is. So then after that, it's like, is Tennessee going to draft them? Is probably like one of the one spots, but I think Tennessee truthfully is going to stink this year. And if they stink this year, that means they're in next year's quarterback class. So I don't see the desperation for them to go get it. And they just had kind of a developmental project guy in Malik Willis last year. So then it keeps going. And then you got the Texans aren't going to take one. They already took one. You got the Jets, Patriots, Packers. Washington's like the one where are they? But I think they've said that they don't want to do this again. They don't want to do this quarterback carousel thing again. So then you got really a slide. So I had the Rams trading up because of obviously the fit there with Liam Cohen, who's now back at Kentucky, but the OC was his OC back in 2021 when he had his best season. Obviously, this probably talked him up to Rams brass. So that's how I see it kind of playing out. No one knows, though. I think no one's really tipping their hand at quarterback besides obviously the Panthers because there's no reason not to for them. But it will obviously dictate kind of the rest of the first round, how those play out.
So Ron Rivera sat down with you guys at the Combine and someone said like, oh, we have a really high draft grade on Sam Howell. And now he has gone and parroted that. He's like, I'd sit down and do these interviews and everyone tells me how much they love Sam Howell too. But if you take what you thought of Howell last year and kind of a year of progress being in a system or being in the NFL, obviously it'll be a different system under Bieniemy, but that prospect, what Sam Howell will be versus Will Levis, how do you compare those two? Because that's ultimately the question Washington is going to be asking if Levis is on the board.
I had Howell's QB1 last year's class. Now, the Ultimate PFF board, after I got together with everyone, I ceded to them and put Malik Willis ahead of him. But I thought his tape was awesome. I think his tools are awesome. I just think the offense he was in and sort of, and the fact that it really didn't teach him how to play quarterback, and the fact that he's 6 foot tall, which is still an issue for a lot of guys in the NFL, were the big things holding him back. And truthfully, falls to the fifth, but he really wasn't a fifth round. I don't care who you were evaluating his tape; he was much better than that. It's just quarterback is kind of a binary thing where some teams will, some teams won't draft one, and so he falls to the end of the pack. I think the tools are there to be, again, like a high-end NFL starter. His deep ball is as good as I've seen in this year's class or last year's class on tape at North Carolina. That was his bread and butter, and you saw in the start he had at the end of the year was throwing some dimes in there down the football field. So I just think he was a guy who really needs to get acclimated to the NFL game, and glad he got some reps in last year. So I would not, if I'm staring between him and Will Levis. And with Will Levis, you're obviously going to have to, you're kind of, I don't know if he's giving up on Sam Howell, but it's, you only get so much practice time to develop two guys. You need both those guys to get serious developmental time in. I just think it's probably, you got to choose one or the other. You can't have two guys in that kind of mold on one roster.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because, like Will Levis is kind of that bigger, arm strength's probably similar, kind of that he gets a lot of Josh Allen comparisons, which I hate because it's like Josh Allen's is like, he's the outlier, he's the unicorn.
Yeah.
It's like, so, but I mean, like, is there a world where they take him at 16 and you would be like, I get it? Or is it like, it just doesn't make sense with Sam Howell on the roster?
They know Howell better than I do, right? Like they've seen him, they know what they got in some way, shape. And I think a lot of the reason he fell last year was because of his injuries and because of how he just basically, like, I heard people like was not good on a whiteboard coming out, like flat out didn't know a lot of stuff. And obviously some of that's like just what he was asked to do at North Carolina. So they know the development he's made over the past, 8 months. And if he really hasn't, and they do draft a Will Levis, that's, obviously a damning sign for a guy like Sam Howell. So I wouldn't hate, I will never blame a team for taking more shots at quarterback when you don't have a quarterback. It's the most valuable position. You're not going to win with, a below average quarterback in today's NFL. Just flat out will not win a Super Bowl. So if we have that, if you don't have a above average one, take as many chances as possible. So I wouldn't blame them. Again, it would be an indictment of Sam Howell benefit.
Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.